I was 28 when I realized I had spent most of my adult life being structurally necessary but emotionally optional. That's not something you notice all at once. It accumulates slowly, like water damage behind drywall. You don't see it happening. You just wake up one day and realize the foundation has been compromised for years, and everyone else has been working across floors you've been silently shoring up, completely unaware that without your constant, invisible labor, the whole structure would have collapsed. My family was never cruel. That's important to say up front because what happened wasn't about cruelty. It was about something more insidious and harder to confront: casual reliance dressed up as love, and the assumption that some people are simply built to carry weight while others are built to be carried. I'm the middle child of three. My older brother, Marcus, is 33. He works in finance, lives in a downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows, and has the kind of life that photographs well. My younger sister, Vanessa, is 25. She's an artist, which in practical terms means she's been finding herself for the better part of a decade, funded by a combination of our parents' generosity and my willingness to quietly absorb the financial and logistical gaps our searching creates. I'm a project manager for a mid-sized consulting firm. I'm good at my job because I'm good at seeing 5 steps ahead, at anticipating problems before they become disasters, at holding complex systems together through careful attention and preemptive action. I've realized, over time, that I approach my family the same way I approach a project with too many dependencies and not enough buffer, with constant vigilance, careful resource allocation, and the quiet understanding that if I stop paying attention, everything will fall apart. Our parents are in their early 60s. Dad had a minor stroke 3 years ago. He recovered well, but it left everyone shaken and hyper-aware of mortality in a way we hadn't been before. Mom has rheumatoid arthritis that's progressed faster than any of us expected. She's not incapacitated, but she's limited in ways that require adaptation, accommodation, and a level of daily practical support that someone has to provide. That someone has always been me. Not because I was asked exactly. Not because there was ever a family meeting where roles were distributed and responsibilities assigned. It happened the way these things always happen, through a series of small moments where I said yes and no one questioned it, where I showed up and everyone accepted it as baseline, where I anticipated a need and met it before anyone else even registered it existed. Marcus lives 4 hours away. He visits twice a year, on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and calls Mom every Sunday evening at exactly 7 p.m. for precisely 20 minutes. The calls are warm and affectionate. He asks about her health, tells her about his work, mentions restaurants he's tried and trips he's planning. She adores him. She lights up when his name appears on her phone. When he visits, she cooks his favorite meals and asks him endless questions about his life, his work, his plans. He's successful and independent and makes her proud, and his distance is never framed as abandonment, it's framed as him having built a good life, which was always the goal. Vanessa lives 30 minutes away, in a shared house with 2 roommates and a rotating cast of romantic interests. She's brilliant and creative and deeply absorbed in her own interior world. She paints sometimes. She writes poetry that she reads at open mic nights. She works part-time at a coffee shop and talks frequently about applying to graduate programs, though she hasn't yet. She's supposed to help Mom with grocery shopping every week, but it happens maybe once a month. The rest of the time, she cancels last minute. Something came up. She's not feeling well. She lost track of time. Mom never pushes back. She just calls me and I go. I live 20 minutes from our parents. I have a key to the house. I know where they keep their medications, their insurance papers, their passwords. I know which doctor's appointments are routine and which ones need someone to take notes and ask follow-up questions. I know that Dad gets anxious in the evenings if he doesn't have a specific plan for the next day, and I know that Mom's hands hurt most in the morning, so I text her every night to remind her to take her anti-inflammatory before bed. I do their grocery shopping every week. I pick up prescriptions. I schedule maintenance for their house and their cars. When something breaks, I'm the one who calls the repair person, gets the quotes, makes the decision. I manage their bills online because Dad finds the computer frustrating and Mom's hands make typing painful. I update their insurance information, file their paperwork, organize their medical records. I do this while working full-time. I do this while maintaining my own apartment, my own life, my own responsibilities. I do this without ever announcing it, because announcing it would be asking for recognition. And asking for recognition feels like admitting that I expect something in return, which would make me selfish. For years, this felt fine. It felt like what you do for people you love. It felt manageable, even if it was tiring. I told myself I was capable, and that capability was its own reward. I told myself that Marcus had his career to focus on, and Vanessa was still figuring things out, and I was the one with the bandwidth, so of course it fell to me. But then, slowly, I started noticing things. I noticed that when I mentioned being tired, the response was sympathetic but brief, followed immediately by someone else's problem that I was expected to help solve. I noticed that my time was treated as infinitely flexible while everyone else's time was treated as precious and constrained. I noticed that when I couldn't do something, there was mild panic, as if the entire system depended on my availability, but when I did do something, there was no acknowledgement, because my doing it was simply the way things worked. I noticed that my parents asked me detailed questions about Marcus's life, about his work and his plans, but rarely asked me anything beyond logistical check-ins. I noticed that Vanessa called me when she needed something, but rarely just to talk. I noticed that family conversations happened in a group text that I was part of, but the actual emotional texture of those conversations, the jokes, the shared references, the warmth seemed to flow more easily between everyone else. I started to feel like infrastructure. Necessary, invisible, and only noticed when I failed. It's a strange thing, realizing you're not actually a person to the people who love you. You're a function. And functions don't have needs. They don't get tired. They don't require maintenance. They just work until they don't, and then everyone is surprised and inconvenienced. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in late September. I'd been feeling off for a few weeks. Tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. A persistent low-grade headache. Some dizziness. I told myself it was stress, poor sleep, too much screen time. I did what I always do, I pushed through. I had too much to do to slow down. That Tuesday, I woke up and couldn't get out of bed. Not in the metaphorical sense, but in the literal, physical sense. The room was spinning. My heart was racing. I felt disconnected from my body, like I was piloting it remotely and the signal was weak. I called in sick to work, which I almost never do. Then I lay very still and tried to figure out what was wrong. After about an hour, I managed to get to my phone and search my symptoms. Everything I read pointed in concerning directions: vertigo, panic attacks, cardiac issues, neurological problems. I needed to see a doctor. I needed someone to drive me because I absolutely could not drive myself. I called my mom. It went to voicemail. I called my dad. Also voicemail. I waited 10 minutes and tried again. Nothing. I lay there trying to decide what to do. I could call an ambulance, but that felt extreme. I could call a friend, but most of my friends were at work and the ones who lived far away. I could wait and hope I felt better, but I was scared and the fear was making everything worse. I called Vanessa. She answered on the fourth ring, sounding distracted. "Hey, what's up? I need help," I said. My voice sounded strange, thin, and far away. "I'm really sick. I can't drive. Can you take me to urgent care?" There was a pause. "Right now, yes, right now." Another pause. I could hear voices in the background music. "I'm actually in the middle of something. Can it wait a couple hours?" I closed my eyes. The room tilted. "I don't think so. What's wrong?" I tried to explain the dizziness, the heart palpitations, the feeling that something was very wrong. Even as I said it, I felt ridiculous, like I was being dramatic. Vanessa sighed. "That sounds like anxiety. You're probably just stressed. Have you tried breathing exercises, Vanessa? I need you to take me to a doctor. I really can't right now. I'm at this thing, and I can't just leave. Can you call Marcus? Marcus lives 4 hours away." "Well, what about Mom and Dad?" "They're not answering. They're probably just busy. Try them again in a bit." "I'm sure you'll be fine. Just rest. Okay, I'll check in later." She hung up. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. I'd asked for help, clearly and directly, and I'd been told no. Not because it was impossible, because it was inconvenient. I tried my parents again. Still no answer. I considered my options. I could call 911, but I still felt like that was an overreaction. I could just wait, see if I felt better. People got dizzy sometimes. It didn't always mean something catastrophic. But I was scared. And I was alone. And for the first time in a very long time, I let myself feel angry. I managed to book a telehealth appointment. The doctor took my symptoms seriously, asked detailed questions, and told me I needed to be seen in person for tests, blood work, and possibly imaging. She offered to send an ambulance. I said no. I said I'd figure it out. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at my phone. I looked at the family group chat where just yesterday Vanessa had asked if anyone could lend her money for rent, and I'd sent it without hesitation. I looked at my calendar, at all the things I had scheduled for my parents in the coming weeks. I looked at my email, at the thread where I'd been coordinating Thanksgiving plans that everyone else was just passively waiting for me to finalize. I'd spent years being the person everyone counted on, and at one time I needed them, I was told to wait. I called a rideshare. I went to urgent care alone. I sat in a waiting room filling out forms with shaking hands, and when they called me back, I answered all the questions by myself, and when the nurse asked if there was anyone they should call, I said no. They ran tests. My heart was fine. My blood work was fine. The doctor said it was likely vestibuloneuritis, a viral infection of the inner ear that causes severe vertigo. It would resolve on its own, but it might take weeks. In the meantime, I needed to rest, avoid driving, and not push myself. I took another rideshare home. I took the medication they'd given me and slept for 14 hours. When I woke up, I had texts from my mom asking if I could stop by that afternoon to help reset the Wi-Fi router, and from Vanessa asking if I'd had a chance to look at the draft of her artist statement for a grant application. Neither of them had followed up about whether I was okay. That's when I realized I had a choice to make. I could be hurt. I could call them out. I could explain, in detail, how dismissed and invisible I felt. I could demand acknowledgement, an apology, and change. Or I could simply stop. Not loudly. Not with an announcement. Just stop. I could stop anticipating their needs. Stop filling the gaps. Stop being the person who made everything work. I could step back and let the infrastructure collapse and see how long it took them to notice. I didn't want revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't want to hurt them. I wanted them to see me. I wanted them to understand, in a way that words could never convey, what it meant that I had been holding everything together. I wanted the absence of my labor to be so glaring, so undeniable, that they couldn't avoid confronting it. So I stopped. I didn't announce it. I didn't send a message saying I was taking a step back or needed space. I just stopped doing the things I'd been doing. When my mom called and asked if I could pick up groceries, I said I couldn't that week. When she asked about the next week, I said I wasn't sure. I didn't offer an alternative. I didn't problem solve. I just said I couldn't. When my dad texted about a weird noise the car was making, I sent him the number for a mechanic and said he should give them a call. When Vanessa asked me to look at her artist statement, I said I didn't have time. When the group chat started planning for Thanksgiving, I didn't respond. I didn't offer to host, didn't offer to coordinate, didn't offer to do anything. I just watched the conversation happen and said nothing. At first, there was mild confusion. My mom called and asked if everything was okay. I said I was fine, just busy with work. She accepted that immediately because me being busy was normal and my availability was something she'd never had to question before. But then things started to fall apart. Small things at first. My parents ran out of Dad's blood pressure medication because no one had checked the refill schedule. Mom missed a physical therapy appointment because no one had reminded her. The kitchen sink started leaking, and instead of being fixed immediately, it leaked for 2 weeks while my dad tried to figure out who to call and kept putting it off because dealing with service people stressed him out. Vanessa's rent was late because I hadn't sent her the money she'd vaguely asked about, and she'd forgotten to follow up until our landlord texted her. She called me, annoyed, asking why I hadn't reminded her. "You didn't ask me to remind you," I said. "You asked if I could lend you money. I couldn't. Since when? Since I have my own expenses." There was a pause. "Are you mad at me or something?" "No," I said. "I'm just not in a position to help right now." She hung up sounding confused and slightly hurt, and I felt a small, sharp pang of guilt. But I didn't call her back. Thanksgiving planning stalled. No one had booked anything. No one had made a shopping list. A week before the holiday, my mom called, sounding stressed. "Honey, what are we doing for Thanksgiving? Are you hosting?" "I wasn't planning to," I said. Oh, well, should we do it here? If you want to, can you help me plan the menu? I don't think I'll have time this year. There was a long silence. Are you sure you're okay? I'm fine, Mom, just overwhelmed with work. Another silence. Okay, well, let me know if that changes. She didn't push. She just accepted it, the same way she'd always accepted my help without question, without examination. Thanksgiving ended up being at Marcus's suggestion, takeout from a local restaurant, eaten at my parents' house with paper plates. It was fine. It was awkward and a little sad, but it was fine. I showed up, ate quietly, and left early, citing a work deadline. No one asked why I'd been so distant. No one commented on the fact that I'd done nothing to make the day happen. They just seemed vaguely relieved that it had happened at all, even in its diminished form. December was harder. My parents started to struggle in more visible ways. Bills were late. The house felt messier, less organized. My mom called me several times, asking for help with things that had clearly been piling up, and each time I gave her a polite excuse. I was busy. I was traveling for work. I wasn't feeling well. The excuses were thin, but she accepted them because the alternative was confronting the fact that I was choosing not to help, and that required a level of directness our family had never practiced. Vanessa called me on a Thursday evening, crying. She'd missed the deadline for a grant application because she'd been disorganized, and she'd been counting on that money. She was upset and overwhelmed, and she wanted me to tell her it would be okay to help her figure out next steps to do what I'd always done, absorb her stress and convert it into a plan. I listened. I didn't offer solutions. When she finally asked what she should do, I said, I don't know. Maybe reach out to the organization and see if there's any flexibility. That's it. That's all we've got. I'm not sure what else to say. You're being really cold lately. What's going on with you? I almost told her. I almost explained everything, the vertigo, the urgent care visit, the way she'd dismissed me when I needed help. But I didn't because I knew how it would go. She'd apologize, probably sincerely, and then nothing would change because the problem wasn't one moment. It was the entire structure of how we related to each other. I'm just trying to manage my own life right now, I said. She hung up, and I sat in my apartment staring at my phone, feeling the guilt and the anger twist together in my chest. Christmas was the tipping point. I told my family I wasn't coming home for the holiday. I said I needed a break, needed some time to myself. The response was immediate and distressed. My mom called, sounding hurt and confused. You're not coming home for Christmas? I think I need to take this one for myself. But we always spend Christmas together, I know. I just need some space this year. Did something happen? Are you upset with us? I could have said yes. I could have let it all out. But I didn't because I wanted them to figure it out on their own. I wanted them to sit with my absence and ask themselves why it felt so catastrophic. I'm not upset, I said. I just need a break. There was a long, painful silence. Okay, if that's what you need. Marcus called me the next day. Mom's really worried about you. What's going on? Nothing's going on. I'm just taking some time for myself. This isn't like you. Maybe it should be. He paused. Are you okay? Like, really okay? It was the first time anyone had asked me that question in a way that felt like it was about me, not about whether I'd be available to fulfill my role. I've been better, I said. Do you want to talk about it? I considered it. But talking to Marcus meant explaining years of accumulated resentment and invisible labor, and I wasn't sure he'd understand. He'd lived his life on the periphery of the family's practical needs, close enough to feel connected but far enough to avoid the weight. Not right now, I said. Okay, but if you need anything, let me know. The offer was sincere, but it was also easy to make because he knew I wouldn't take him up on it. I never had before. I spent Christmas alone. I'd never done that before. I ordered takeout, watched movies, and slept late. It was quiet. It was lonely. But it was also strangely peaceful. I didn't call my family. They didn't call me. The week after Christmas, my mom called again. She sounded different this time, not hurt, but worried in a more concrete way. Honey, I need to ask you something. Okay, are you pulling away from us? The question was so direct it startled me. What do you mean you've been distant for months now? You are not helping with things the way you used to. You didn't come home for Christmas. I feel like something's wrong, and I don't know what it is. I sat down. This was the moment. I could deflect, or I could tell the truth. I've been taking a step back, I said carefully. Why? Because I needed to, but we need you. There it was. The thing that had been true all along, finally said out loud. I know, I said. That's the problem. I don't understand. I took a breath. Mom, do you know what I do for you? And Dad, of course, you help us with things. We're so grateful. Do you know specifically what I do? There was a pause. Well, you help with groceries and appointments and things like that. I do all of your grocery shopping. Every week, I manage all of your medications and prescriptions. I schedule and track all of your doctor's appointments. I handle all of your home maintenance and repairs. I pay your bills online. I organize your paperwork and insurance. I coordinate everything for the family, including holidays. I've been doing this for years. Silence. Mom, when I was sick in September and needed help, I called Vanessa. She said no. She said she was busy and suggested I was just anxious. I ended up going to urgent care alone because no one was available. And afterward, no one checked to see if I was okay. You texted me to ask about the Wi-Fi router. Her voice was small. I didn't know you were that sick. I told Vanessa I needed to go to the doctor. She said it could wait. She didn't tell me, I know, but also, you didn't ask. Neither did Dad. Neither did Marcus, because you're all used to me being fine, being capable, being available. And when I'm not, it doesn't register as a crisis. It just registers as an inconvenience that's not. She stopped. I don't think of you that way. I know you don't. Not consciously, but functionally. That's what I am. I'm the person who makes everything work, and as long as everything's working, no one thinks about how or why. I'm sorry, she said, and she sounded like she meant it. I didn't realize. I know that's part of the problem. We sat with that for a moment. What do you need from us? She asked finally. It was a good question. I'd spent months pulling back, but I hadn't articulated what I actually wanted because I wasn't sure I knew. I need you to see me, I said. Not as someone who helps, but as someone who exists. I need my time and my energy to be valued the way Marcus's is, the way Vanessa's is. I need it to be okay for me to say no without everything falling apart. It is okay. It's not, though. When I say no, there's panic or guilt or this assumption that I'll figure out a way to do it anyway. And when I do say yes, when I do help, it's invisible. It's just what I do. She was quiet for a long time. You're right, she said finally. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. It was something. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I'm not trying to punish you, I said. I'm just trying to survive. I understand, she said. And I'm going to talk to your father and to Marcus and Vanessa. We need to do better. Okay, will you come visit soon? Not to help, just to be here. Maybe, I said. We hung up, and I sat in my apartment feeling hollowed out and exhausted. The conversation had been necessary, but it hadn't been satisfying. There was no catharsis, no dramatic reversal. Just a quiet acknowledgement of something that had been true for years. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. Slowly, awkwardly, but noticeably. My mom started using a grocery delivery service. My dad hired someone to help with home maintenance tasks. They started managing their own bills again, with some setup help from a tech-savvy neighbor. They were figuring it out, not because they suddenly became more capable, but because they had to. Vanessa called to apologize. It was a real apology, specific and uncomfortable. She acknowledged that she'd dismissed me when I was sick and that she'd been relying on me in ways she hadn't examined. She said she was trying to be more independent, more organized. I could hear the effort in her voice. Marcus visited. Not for a holiday, just a random weekend in January. He took my parents out to dinner, helped my dad with some paperwork, and then drove to my apartment to see me. We went for coffee. He looked uncomfortable. Mom told me about the conversation you two had, he said. Okay, I didn't realize how much you were doing. I thought we were all helping. You call Mom every week. That's not nothing. It's not the same as what you've been doing. No, I agreed. He looked down at his coffee. I think I assumed you wanted to do it. You're so good at that stuff, and I'm terrible at it, so I just thought it made sense. It did make sense, but that doesn't mean it was fair. You're right. I'm sorry. We sat with that for a while. Then he said, "What can I do now?" It was the first time anyone had asked me that. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But I appreciate you asking. Things didn't go back to the way they were because the way they were wasn't sustainable. But they didn't fall apart either. My family adjusted. They figured out systems. They learned to ask for help instead of assuming it. They started treating my time as something finite and valuable. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. There were still times when I felt taken for granted or when someone made an assumption about my availability. But there were also times when someone checked in just to see how I was, when someone said thank you in a way that felt real, when someone adjusted their own plans instead of expecting me to adjust mine. I started to build my own life more intentionally. I took a weekend trip with a friend. I signed up for a class I'd been wanting to take. I made plans that I didn't cancel or rearrange to accommodate someone else's needs. I learned that I could love my family and still set boundaries. That I could care without caretaking. That being capable didn't mean I had to be constantly available. The revenge, if you can call it that, wasn't in making them suffer. It was in making them see. In letting the absence of my invisible labor become visible enough that they had to confront it. In forcing them to recognize that what I'd been doing was work, was sacrifice, was a choice I'd been making every day, not just an inherent feature of who I was. I don't think they understood it fully until it was gone. And even now, I don't think they grasp the full extent of it. That they understand more than they did. They see me more than they did. And that's something. I still help sometimes. But now it's a choice, not an obligation. Now it's appreciated, not assumed. And the difference between those two things is everything. There's a particular kind of loneliness in being depended upon but not truly seen. It's the loneliness of being essential but not valued, of being needed but not wanted for who you are, only for what you provide. I'd lived in that loneliness for years, telling myself it was love, telling myself it was family, telling myself it was just how things were. But stepping back, letting things fall apart, forcing them to see me, that broke the loneliness in a way that nothing else could have. Because they couldn't unsee it once they saw it. They couldn't go back to taking me for granted once they'd experienced what life looked like without me holding everything together. The anger I felt has mostly faded. What's left is something quieter, a kind of sad clarity about what our relationships had been, and a cautious hope about what they might become. I'm rebuilding trust slowly. I'm learning to believe that when they say they value me, they mean it. I'm learning to ask for what I need instead of just providing what others need. I'm learning that being seen, really seen, is worth the discomfort of letting people witness me being something other than endlessly capable. I still talk to my family regularly. I still visit. I still help sometimes when I have the capacity and the desire. But I'm no longer the invisible scaffolding holding everything up. I'm a person with limits, with needs, with a life that matters just as much as theirs do. And they're learning to see that. Not perfectly, not always, but more and more. It's not the ending I would have written if someone had handed me the script years ago. There's no dramatic confrontation, no satisfying moment of vindication. There's just the slow, unglamorous work of renegotiating relationships that had calcified into dysfunction. But it's real. And it's mine. And I'm no longer disappearing into the background of my own life. I spent so many years believing that my value came from what I could do for others. That love meant making myself small and useful and endlessly available. That family meant sacrificing everything, always, without question or complaint. I don't believe that anymore. Now I believe that love requires visibility. That family means seeing each other as whole people, not just as the roles we play. That sacrifice only means something if it's recognized, if it's reciprocated, if it exists within a structure that values everyone's time and energy and humanity equally. I'm still learning what it means to be part of my family without being consumed by it. To maintain connection without losing myself. To help without enabling, to care without caretaking. It's harder than just doing everything myself. It requires more vulnerability, more honesty, more willingness to disappoint people and sit with their discomfort. But it's also more real, more sustainable, more like actual love rather than the performance of it. Some days I still feel guilty for stepping back. I still have the impulse to fix things, to anticipate needs, to make everything easier for everyone else. But I'm getting better at recognizing that impulse for what it is, not generosity, but self-erasure. Not love, but fear that if I'm not useful, I won't be wanted. And I'm learning, slowly, that I am wanted. Not for what I do, but for who I am. Not because I make everything easier, but because I'm their daughter, their sister, their family member. Because I matter, whether or not I'm solving their problems. That's the thing no one tells you about being the person everyone depends on. It's not that you're appreciated. It's that you become invisible. You become so integrated into the structure of everyone's life that they stop seeing you as separate from it. You're not a person anymore. You're just the way things work. And when you step back, it feels like everything's falling apart. But it's not. It's just becoming visible. All the work you were doing, all the sacrifice you were making, all the weight you were carrying, it finally shows up in relief like a photograph developing. That's what happened to me. I didn't destroy my family. I didn't even hurt them, not really. I just stopped holding everything together, and in the space that created, they finally saw what I'd been doing all along. They saw me. And once they saw me, they couldn't unsee me. They couldn't go back to the comfortable assumption that I'd always be there, always be available, always say yes. That's the revenge, I think. Not in their suffering, but in their awareness. In making them live with the knowledge of what they'd taken for granted. I don't know if our relationships will ever be what I wished they were. I don't know if we'll ever achieve the kind of reciprocity and mutual care that I think families should have. But we're closer than we were. We're trying, all of us, in our imperfect ways. And I'm no longer waiting for them to see me. I'm no longer performing capability and hoping someone notices the cost. I'm just living my life, setting my boundaries, and trusting that the people who love me will adjust. Some of them are adjusting better than others. That's okay. I'm learning that I can't control how other people respond to my boundaries. I can only control whether I maintain them. I'm learning that being loved on my own terms by fewer people matters more than being needed by everyone. I'm learning that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is stop. Just stop. Stop anticipating. Stop managing. Stop fixing. Stop absorbing everyone else's stress and chaos and need. Just stop and see what happens. What happened for me was that my family fell apart a little bit, and then they figured it out, and then they started to see me as something other than the person who kept them from falling apart. And that's not nothing. That's actually everything. If you've ever felt like the person everyone depends on but no one really sees, I hope you know that you're allowed to step back. You're allowed to let things be hard for other people. You're allowed to protect your own time and energy and emotional capacity. You're allowed to stop being infrastructure and start being a person. It won't be comfortable. It might not even feel good at first, but it's necessary. Because you can't build real relationships from a place of invisibility. You can't be loved if no one sees you. And you can't be seen if you're always in the background, making everything work so smoothly that no one notices you're there. So if you need permission, here it is. Step back. Say no. Let things fall apart just a little bit. And see if the people who love you are willing to see you, really see you, once you're no longer just making everything easy for them. You might be surprised by what you find.